Hello, welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us live, we love seeing you every Thursday night, 9:30 Eastern, both at Facebook and YouTube land, live on the chat. Those chats are always fun. And remember, your chats might show up on the show. So there's a little bonus perk for watching us live. If not, we love having you listen to us on your favorite podcasting app or on the Facebook and YouTube replay. You know me. My name is John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. And next up for his introduction, a man who could not wait to get started with this show.
I couldn't wait to see everybody and their smiling faces online. Jason Richards, past master of Vacation Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia. I'm glad to be here.
Alrighty then. Next up, Robert Johnson. How's it going, buddy?
It's going pretty good, guys. Happy to be here before our big trip tomorrow. So, my trip tomorrow, you guys are doing something else. I don't know. Anyway, past master Waukegan. Saturday. You guys come Saturday. Waukegan 78, past master, current sitting secretary, and secretary over at Space Novum 1183, the premier lodge of Masonic education in the grand jurisdiction of Illinois. Happy to be here.
Nice. Happy to have you. And last but not least, Never Past Master, Joe Martinez.
Hello, Never Past Master. I love it. I noticed that I wasn't in the room yet, so Robert could not hear me say for life every time he said secretary. So I'm really bummed. So never do that again. Number one. Joe Martinez, back from Texas, still worshipful master. I tried to escape, but I'm still here. So yeah, Joe Martinez, worshipful master, Manasseh Lodge, number 182. Member of 40 bajillion other things, and damn glad to be here.
Woo! Awesome.
Woo!
Super cool. Glad to have everyone here. Full house tonight. So, before we get into it, as always, I want to give a special shout out to the Patreons who support the show. Head over to patreon.com/the Masonic Roundtable. Chip in a few bucks and help make Joe a little handsomer every week. Please, we need the money.
What filters are for, man?
For Joe needs some new filters.
Well,
I gotta get the $5. You know, they got that bundle, the $5, and you get 100 AI generated graphics, and they all have me with hair, like luscious hair. It's awesome. Yeah. I love it.
I think we're just gonna start doing little steps, like mascara.
Yeah, just one
foundation,
a little bit, just subtle, right? Work your way into it.
Yep.
All I have to say is, who wore it best?
You're a jerk.
Nice.
I look like I'm wearing 2 Kevlar vests when no, that's just me and my body size.
We had I had a good friend of mine who once said everybody looks better in mascara. Just so that I just throw that out there. I guess that's what we got to do. And I think the top hat guy, what's his Odd Job?
Odd job, man.
His pants were nice and creased. Joe, you're gonna have to work on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so hold up a second. I had to wear a black suit in 110 degrees in Fort Worth, Texas. Okay, there was no part of my body that was not glistening with perspiration.
Take it up with Texas oil.
Texas, I don't know what you people did to piss off whatever deity it is you pray to, but good God in heaven, people. It was so it was like 100 degrees at 9:00 at night. I'm like, what is this? Nonsense.
It's a cold spell. That's what it is.
Man, don't like it.
All right. Speaking of things that you don't like, tarot card of the week. Joe.
I love it. I love it.
We have to go extra slowly, just out of spite today for none of your business.
Yes. It says hurry up.
None of your business.
So, Joe, what's our tarot card of the week? What's our deck of the week? How about that? Let's start there.
What the hell are you talking about? You told Jason to do it.
I told you to have it.
No.
He told you to do it.
And he's gone.
I'm back. Hi.
Hey, there he is.
Oh, okay.
Hey.
There we go.
No, I don't want that one. All right, we're gonna go with the DC tarot deck for the
All
super nerds out there. Right on. Don't know if we've done this deck before. I thought you told me to put this one away, sir. So I did.
Well, here we are.
Well, here we are. We're gonna shuffle a little bit, and we're gonna talk about it. Oh, Lord have mercy. Okay. All right. Okay. You ready?
We could always do a Lenormand at some point.
All right. Stop talking for a second, you. Okay.
No.
Next week.
All right. Boom. There we go. Ace of Wands.
Ooh, I love it.
Mm.
And what staff do we have
Is
there?
that a Klingon warrior staff?
No, that's for the
Batlet?
super nerds, that is a Starman.
Mm.
Yeah.
Ah,
I think they did some crappy show on the CW.
On the CW.
I feel like that's
Uh,
a bit redundant.
yeah.
well,
Oh,
hey,
that's-
Ace
Hey.
of Wands, right?
Ace of Wands.
Ace of Wands.
Yeah.
Yep.
Growth and potential.
potential, like
Manifestation.
creativity.
It's a great first date card.
Yeah,
Throw that out there.
just
Growth.
because it.
Throw that
looks
out to
like-
who? When was the last time any of us had a first date?
A long time. Long time. It's a
16,
good
17 years
date
ago?
card. Period.
Yeah.
It is a good date card.
Yeah.
A lot of potential. A lot of mas potencia.
Growth.
See.
A lot of. Yeah, so it's a good card. It's a good power. I mean, and it's always good. Seriously, when you draw one of those, if you're starting a new project, starting any new endeavor, it's like, hey, things are lining up to make you successful.
Do it.
Which is a good segue into this week's topic, which is how to be successful with Masonic instruction. All right, so one topic I've been thinking about for a while here is on the concept of like basically Masonic pedagogy, which is like how do we explore other options of teaching Masonic education, right? There's no doubt that all of us here on the Masonic Roundtable are huge fans of Masonic education. However, that's just the message. How you convey the message and how it gets received are completely, different aspects of how do we, grow and create and propagate this art and this craft that we have. So tonight we're going to talk about all the different ways that either work today or maybe some areas that we could explore going forward. Any other thoughts on that before we dive in? Joe?
No, I think this is an important topic to cover because for two reasons. One, things are so jurisdictional, right? There's so many different ways to skin a cat, and it seems like every jurisdiction does it a little bit differently. So there's no right answer, right? There's our own experiences and what we've seen and what works and what doesn't work. But I think the other big thing is that we as an organization are so stodgy in the way we do things in general, right? That the thing that worked 75 years ago is still being thrown out today. And who's to say that is the right or the wrong way to do it, right? So change is hard.
It's immutable.
It's tradition.
You know what? Crucifying people was tradition, but we stopped doing that after a while. We were like, wow, this is bad, like.
My favorite quote I saw, some meme on Facebook that said, tradition is just peer pressure from dead people.
I like it.
It's kind of true, right? But
Yeah.
but one of the things I think we'll talk about tonight is presenting new information and new facts to an audience of people who might not be so ready to receive those things. So
Exactly. So let's talk about kind of the way it's done today. So if you're not a Freemason, then there is a little bit of learning that has to occur as you go through your degree system. Again, it is highly jurisdictional, but it generally falls into one or two categories. Here in Virginia, we are what we call a mouth-to-ear state. So after we go through an oral play, or states with no written ritual, that's not the way we did it in my ear. That's funny. Because once you actually complete your degree, then you actually have to study your catechism, and none of it can be written down. We don't get cipher books, unlike most jurisdictions. So we have nothing to even look at. We actually have to depend on a mentor to remember the ritual and then to actually convey it to us orally in a
In
private
person.
setting, in person, in a private setting.
Yeah,
Right.
because that's, doing it over the phone is a no-no.
Huge no-no, right?
Illegal.
The spies could be listening, right? So that's the way it's always been, especially here in Virginia and other jurisdictions. Robert, does yours have a cipher book?
So in Illinois, we have, well, for the longest time, we did have a cipher book, and it was really just the those clandestine Ronane books, or Ronane. Yeah, I think it's Ronane, or the Ezra Cook books. Not a cookbook. Ezra Cook, the publisher
Got it.
of these exposés, and they were so pretty much spot on with what eventually became the Illinois Blue Book or the Standard Ritual.
Gotcha.
So a lot of guys actually still have those, and they keep them in their back pockets. Now, Illinois does publish its ritual in the standard work. It's a blue book, and everything is in plain language with the exception of the obligation and passwords, points of entrance, those kinds of
Right.
things. But all the lectures are open there and
Good.
for anybody to see. So there's no arguing with anybody about what it says because everybody can see what it says right now.
That's good. It's good to have.
Yep.
That's nice.
So that's again a tradition that most jurisdictions have on how to, after the degrees, instruct the candidate on what they need to know to progress, whether it be through a certain period of time or they pass a proficiency of some sort, whether it be orally or we have short form in Virginia as well.
Or they, go out to the water fountain for 5 minutes and then come back for their next degree.
Yeah, I think President McKinley did that too. But so it works, but in the 21st century, it's not the most efficient way of doing that.
It isn't like just reading and remembering isn't the most efficient thing.
One-way communication. That's the way that it's always been. Instruction has always been the teacher talks, you listen and write down, or not writing down Masonic things, but
In your brain.
stored away in here, right? And
They
you're
did other
expected to-
things in pedagogical relationships in ancient Greece too, but
Yes.
that's frowned upon.
But we're going to pick just one of those and stick to it for 300 years. So, there's always the bias of, well, that's the way I suffered through it. So therefore, if I'm going to be someone's mentor, well, that's the way I learned how to do it. And there's really not any better ways, especially that I'm allowed to use. But let's just go through the thought experiment of what are other things to consider that if we were to reimagine the different types of learning and instruction techniques that are available, especially now, what would that look like? So I'm going to open it up for anyone at all. Anyone? Jason,
I've got something.
Okay, Jason, what are you thinking about?
What am I thinking about? I'm thinking about Joe really wants to go. So
Okay. All right. You're nice.
Oh, hi. So I just had a question for clarification. Are we just talking about candidates or are we talking about everybody? Everybody.
Masonic education, yeah, included. Mhm.
Yes, because we started the conversation off about candidates, and
Sure.
you brought up the whole mouth to ear thing, catechism.
No,
Can't do it
go
over
ahead.
the phone. There are some jurisdictions that don't teach a catechism, so there's something to be said for the pedagogy of how valuable is it to just learn some ritual via memorization. Like, let's take the District of Columbia for example. Each lodge, lodges there have a little freedom to do, sort of different things with their candidates. There's a bare minimum
Different requirements.
but some lodges I know have their candidates write papers and research.
They must write a paper.
You must present a paper. Then when
wow.
it comes
Chat
time to-
GPT cannot write it for you.
correct. Yeah, and in fact, it's funny. My daughter started college. My oldest started college this week, and I'm looking over her syllabus, and it's funny. There's a whole big thing on there. It's we run AI scanners on all of your work, and blah 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 blah. And you can't even use Grammarly anymore, which is ridiculous because I use Grammarly to clean up my stuff. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, so they have to write a paper and present a paper, and it turns into paper, and then a really long discussion about the paper, and we find out what the candidate learned and what his thoughts are and stuff. So, that's to say, is there value in rote memorization of things that these people have no idea what it means?
As Scott Newberry says, right? Because education should be a conversation, not a lecture, right? We don't want to be talked to. We want to have this discussion of what it means.
Well, and I've gone through countless like corporate sponsored trainings where they talk about facilitation, because I'm a facilitator as part of some of the stuff I do at work, and they always go through the same example of like you remember like 3% of what you hear, you remember, goes right through. You remember 10% of what you actually see, and then like it goes up exponentially when you talk about like modeling behavior and what you kind of work through cognitively, and figure out on your own. And so I think there has to be an inherent practical application for things to really stick and really stick well. And I think that's something new in the forms of Masonic pedagogy that I think we should think about incorporating more than we do. Practical exercises to build good habits to truly inculcate the tenets of the fraternity.
I like that. I'm reminded of the Benjamin Franklin quote, right? Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I'm actually learning. So whether he actually said it or not is irrelevant. It proves Jason's point.
Well, it's like you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. You set a man on fire, you keep him warm for the rest of his life. Something like that.
Sounds like something I would say. Yes.
No, I like that, because now you're getting into kind of the improvements that can come into
right. Yeah.
To how do we learn, how do we engage, right? Because modern science has shown that people are different types of learners. What works for Jason might not work for Joe, which might not work for Robert. So it's not a one size fits all anymore. And some people really apply learning differently. So for me, I'm definitely much more of a visual learner. I like to see things spatially, and I can start to organize events. Some people are kinesthetic learners, where they need to touch it and feel it, and they want to hold that 24-inch gauge, right? And smell it and look at it and feel the polish on the wood to see how it applies to them. So
for me, like I was very auditory, and so I picked up the catechism really, really quickly from a mouth to ear type of scenario.
Yeah, that's true. And yeah, Jason has an amazing mind for that, because he can hear the syntax, put it together, and he's off and running.
I can match the cadence, and my brain just kind of fills it in.
Yeah, that
drummer for the win. Yeah.
Nice. Right. What type of learner are you, Robert?
I'm definitely kinesthetic. So it doesn't work. It's not a great thing for, like, I guess, learning and memorizing things. So what ends up happening is my brain decides to make up the difference by sort of projecting a kinesthetic like technique to something that is kind of intangible, of like reading, right? So I have a pretty photographic memory. Like, for instance, when I'm recalling ritual, I know where it is on the page. It's almost like I'm reading it back out of the book.
That's awesome.
So, but that's what happens for me. Like, other people just can friggin' memorize it and it's awesome and they get it like right away. I do have to practice. So I guess it's not truly photographic, but it's imprinting.
But you can now see it in your mind's eye. The more you do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But like when it comes
almost
to,
like eidetic.
Yeah, kind of a little bit. But the thing is like with anything else, let's say ritual in particular that involves motion, the things that are outside of the written or the written word or what we're trying to say. Here in Illinois, and I know in many other states, they're very militaristic in the way we do things. There are counts, like when we do a rod shift, 1, 2, 3, 4, that kind of thing. So a lot of that and getting down that ritual for me is much easier than, say, reading how the ritual is supposed to be done in a book, when I can do it like, in real time with a class of, certified lodge instructors or what have you. So for me, that's what works best. I'm a kinesthetic learner.
It's one way to involve candidates. If you're mentoring someone, right, and you're trying to teach them either a specific part of ritual or actually go through the catechism with them, one thing that I've heard works really well, I've never tried it, is actually go into the lodge room with the candidate and actually walk through the degree with them as if they are going through it, and stop, do some instruction.
Right.
Here's what this meant. Here's what that meant. Let's keep going to the next step, right? Because they are getting all the senses involved, right? They are moving. They're smelling the lodge room with fewer guys in it, which is good. And they're also being involved. They're in the space. And so I think, because anytime you can get more of the senses involved in learning, that's a win.
Well, it's that repetition too. When you're going through the degree yourself, it's over in a flash. You're disoriented for most of it. It's sensory overload. And so I've actually taken several of my mentees back to the lodge room when we're learning catechism, and we go through the same steps that they went through, and just with a clearer head and more of an understanding what actually is going on and what it means. Because again, ritual memorization is good for making new Masons, but it's not good for achieving the aim of our fraternity, which is to inculcate our lessons and make men better.
So we talked about learning styles. Go ahead, Robert.
I was a little late there on unmuting. I apologize. But to what Jason just said is so important. And we've been harping on this for a bazillion years. There's a lot of guys out there that have been harping on this, but I think it bears kind of reiterating and really driving this idea home that sure, the ritual and the words and the rote memorization can make a Mason in terms of their initiation and putting them through the degree. But this kind of idea of inculcating, there's this idea that people go, oh, well, through that memorization, you start to really learn what that language tends to mean. And then you start to embody that.
It's not osmosis.
That's right. It is not. And just because, like, let's just say, for instance, that you magically, in, let's say, the short period of 3 years, decide that you now understand the ritual as contextually and historically accurate, like an understanding of, right? Like what the words meant, when they were written, you understand that, not what those words mean today, but what they used to mean. And so you understand that. Let's pretend you could get that in 3 years. It's nearly impossible unless you're somebody like Jason, who's like, master history here. But the thing is just because you can do that doesn't mean you're not out there in the world doing what it's telling you to do. I mean, I can tell you right now, the ritual calls us, and it says every person has like basically a claim to your kind offices. So even if we just take that small bit, now you look out there and you look at all the people who say, no, I'm not helping that person.
Do good to some.
Right?
Do good to
like
all.
I'm not okay. So everybody usually knows, they know like my deist nature, but I find one of the best pieces of scripture. My buddy Scott Duvall had said it one day, and it just really stuck with me. Right? What you do for the least of you, you do for me.
Right.
And so those kinds of ideas, you can't become just a better Mason. You can't just learn it by osmosis, like Jason said. So it's important you have to have an educational foundation and a class and discussions and talking about this stuff
You got to
Can't just
apply
be
it.
ritual.
Yeah, if Juan were here, he would say applied Freemasonry. Bingo.
That's right.
Right. And so, there's an interesting dichotomy between the book knowledge and the practical application, especially when it comes to spiritual growth and mysticism. Little quote here that says, he acts and reads no more. He prays, he forgives, and has no longer time for judging and criticizing. Well, the intellectual wonders how this mystic, what books this mystic read to become this holy emanation of goodness. And the more and more the intellectual reads, the more frustrated the intellectual gets, because you can read all the books in the world, but if you don't take the message and take the tenets to heart and apply them, you're never going to see that growth.
That reminds me of like what the Englishman and the Alchemist. He's like,
Mhm.
he's reading all these books. He's on the back of the camel reading books. I know I'm going to figure out the Philosopher's Stone in the next book. I know it's going to be in there, right? And he never finds it because he doesn't apply it. Joe?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why we're talking about this tonight, right? Like, one of the important aspects of pedagogy is critical thinking, and how much critical thinking does one do when they're rote memorizing their catechism? You know what I mean? To Jason's point, bringing people into the lodge, and walking them through that's phenomenal. I love that you do that. Not a lot of people do. At our lodge, for the longest time, we would have a degree, and then the next couple of weeks after that, we would, because we practice every week, we would have ritual practice, but we would practice that same degree that we just did, and we'd bring the candidate back and sit him down and be like, hey, this is what you saw, this is now the hoodwink's off, and this is all the things that you heard and stuff, and here's where things happen. So it starts to sink in and they're able to learn that. But again, the whole, for me, the concept of teaching catechism through rote memorization and then doing nothing with it is, you're wasting people's time. You really are. There's no nice way to say that.
And so we've talked a lot about the initial stage of pedagogy, which is, the making of the Mason and kind of that initial certification of that man as a Mason. What about recertification? What do we do for the guys who have been in lodge for 30 years?
Don't get me started.
Like what's the plan for, PDUs, right? Professional development.
I was going to say, yeah. So as you were getting to, Jason, every professional certification that's worth its grain of salt, like, has a re-up time period that's not good forever, and not in that between when you got it and when you need to recertify, you need to prove you've done something with it, or have taken additional learnings in that field of study. Right? Well, how amazing would that be to have, Masonic, professional development units, right? To say, what have you done in the past 2 years as a Master Mason to learn more about symbolism, learn more about the officers, learn more about your Grand Lodge regulations, your lodge bylaws, right? Those kind of things. That'll be amazing to say. Just show me you've done something Masonically.
And it's kind of, it's things like the Royal Schofield Society in Ohio, or the Hugra Academy, or the Master Craftsman course. There are little pockets of excellence as far as continued Masonic education and deeper Masonic education go. It's just, little pockets here and there. And that's why, to me, Masonic education is so critical as a part of every lodge meeting. Fun fact, every lodge meeting in Virginia, by law, must have a Masonic education component to it. Kind of.
I mean, I've been to a handful of Virginia meetings, and they don't.
It's not. It is not education as we see it.
So yeah, most people get around that, and I'm calling you out. You know who you are. Most people get around that by saying that doing a part of ritual counts as education. So yeah,
technically,
yeah. Yeah.
So you want to do the bare minimum. That's 37 pieces of flair, right?
Correct.
Because we want people to, express themselves. Yeah, so that's it. We should have some sort of education in everyone. Now, another thing I wanted to think about too is, just since I've been alive, there's been a growing focus on, how individuals and kids in school learn, right? Because there are different learning disabilities, right? That some that have been previously undiagnosed with previous generations, right? Things that we've only found ways to measure them through modern techniques, right? So we have to take that into consideration, that it's not even just the way that things are presented from a lecture standpoint, but also maybe that is not how the learner absorbs information.
Yeah, and I
right?
think there's got to be yeah, I think, okay, so 10, 15, maybe even 5 years ago, we routinely used words like learning disability, and this comes from a place of like social norms. Like, apparently, the way the school system works, if you learn well and within that locked in system, then you're regular. If you tend to learn better, just slightly different, it can be classified as a learning disability, just because you don't, you're the square peg in the round hole. And so we have seen this in the fraternity for many years. You see it, and it comes off as kind of like a remnant of even the trade guild days. Not everybody learns the same. And when you take on an apprentice of any sort, you teach them in the way they learn, because you're friends. You kind of learn how they learn. You understand them better. And so, even to say like learning disability today, it's more like non-traditional ways of learning, right? Like,
Yeah.
I technically would have a learning disability because of the way I do math. Uh, they thought for years I was just like an idiot savant. It's like, nope, I just do it in my head a little bit differently, that involves rounding and subtraction, because that's just the way my brain works, right? I couldn't write the formulas on the chalkboard the way they wanted. So, I'm LD. And unfortunately, there's a lot of brothers out there that can get quite frustrated because we've been teaching the same way forever. So this is a wonderful topic that we're exploring, because you guys are bringing up all of these different methodologies. And I hope that lodges out there are going, hell yes, finally somebody can, relate. So just a note.
Another thing that I've been thinking of too. So I'm going to ask a question to you guys. So you buy some new tech, right? It's something that's unique, right? It's not a new MacBook. It's not, it's something that is special, has a lot of functions. What's the first thing that you do? Like, if you want to learn more about it,
You read the manual.
Nah.
Watch
guys
YouTube
don't read the
videos.
manual.
YouTube videos.
Watch YouTube videos. That's where I was going. So at least one guy got it right. Right. We go straight.
I just punch around.
Just click on stuff until it breaks. Yeah. No, most people, cool people, they'll go right to YouTube. YouTube is the number 2 search engine in the world right now, right? Because they want to see it. They want to get some feedback. They want to see all the
somebody do it. Exactly.
I want to see somebody do it so I can copy that, right? There is no just go check out the video part of Masonic instruction. However, the good news is since COVID, we've talked at length about all the different educational papers and topics that have been put online. So we have to consider that as well, that there is a generation that won't read the manual. They'll just go straight to Google or straight to YouTube and search it up, as my kids say. And they'll find audio visual, not just rote instruction, not just mouth to ear. They're going to find lots of different ways of text, audio, video, multimedia, PowerPoints, videos, all that, to combine their way of ingesting this information. And so I think that's something that, wouldn't it be nice if a Grand Lodge had some sort of, hey, just after this degree, go log into our Grand Lodge education website And now here's a whole bunch of videos that can describe stuff. And if if you can't come to lodge, you can see here, we're going to point out things in the lodge that you heard about, and we're going to go a little bit deeper on what the symbolism of this means. Like, how great would that be?
That violates my obligation, along with my Masonic tattoos. Violates my obligation.
They all violate your obligation.
Violate something. Yeah.
Yeah. Did they not? Do you ever? Okay, sorry for this aside. Have you ever been accused of that?
Of violating your obligation?
Violating your obligations because you have tattoo?
No, but I've seen enough of the face. Well, you got to be quasi intelligent to actually take some of my tattoos and relate it to Freemasonry. So, but yeah, I mean, how many times have we seen on the Winding Stairs or
Sure, yeah.
what's another popular place where people just yell? Texas Freemasons. That's another good one. Where people post like, "Oh, I got my past master tattoo."
All things butthurt. Yeah, good thing I.
Everybody loses their mind. It's like, you violated your obligation with a square and compass. I'm like, and I'll read it. You know what? I give in. I read it for an hour.
So did my lodge. It's on the door. Like,
all right. I gotta stop you guys. Sorry for my tangential question. Back to John. Sorry.
Back to John. I got something though.
Go ahead.
Touch on what you were saying. I love the old Masonic trope of go read a book. It's like, no, we don't have time to talk about this here, but go read this book, or, and people will hit you with the good standards, morals and dogma. Great to give to a new Master Mason. That's just priceless. The man's going to lose his mind in a week.
amazing paperweight.
It is. But, the simple answer of, well, go read a book. And there's your answer. Now, while I love reading books, every single one of us love reading books. There's got to be a way to break that mold of just go send somebody off by himself to read a book and, glean the secrets of the universe.
I'm glad you brought that up, because my first day on the job, right out of school, I was in a highly technical engineering job, and literally they just said, here's your cubicle. Oh, and here are the books you need to read. And they just basically dropped what was the engineering equivalent of morals and dogma. Poof, right on my desk, and said,
bar.
Have fun. Yeah, exactly. Enjoy. Let me know if you have any questions.
Well, yeah, we're starting to get angerness on the chat here. Oh, what's that? What is that?
So when I started with VBA way back in the day,
Nice.
they were like,
you're old.
They were like, just read this.
Thud.
Yeah, I was like,
the puff of dust.
Yeah, I was like, so apparently when you build out something, you need to understand functions and scopes and executing function procedures and blah, blah, blah.
It was like my my Python book that was like that thick. Like,
Yeah.
Or what about the 9 editions of my CISSP book that kept changing every 4 months?
Yes, we added a new paragraph. You had to buy a new book.
We added a semicolon. So you got to buy a whole new book. The test is gonna be different. But no, back to my point. I think that
taking taking a page out of Dean Leffenwell's book.
Yes.
What I've learned is that not everybody likes. I have no problem, and I think many of us have no problem curling up with a book and just smashing it, right, and getting through it and pulling things out of it. But not everybody likes that, So I know that some places, some groups, and some organizations, and even some lodges, they'll have book clubs.
I like that.
I've been to some. I've hosted some, and I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is learning how people get through the material and what things they pull out, because it's completely different from the stuff that I pull out. And having those discussions, going all the way back to your point, is taking different ways of ingesting this material. Is the discussion is more fun than actually reading the content,
Right. So you're discussing collaborative learning at that point, right? Where you're going to get insights, and ideas have sex. And so when you have one good idea and another good idea, it can actually create.
What is it with you today, man?
Symbiotic.
You got the grabbing the gauge and ideas having. What is with you, man?
It's what happens when you draw the Ace of Wands.
The Ace of Wands is like just totally clouded my mind for the rest of the episode. Now, there's another aspect that I wish would be kind of cool, related to the collaborative learning environment. There's a modern thing, like Khan Academy is the best example of this, which is called the flipped classroom, where students will actually, for homework, they'll actually do the reading. And then when they go to class, they're actually applying it, working through problems, and having a teacher there to help them work through the problems, right? So it's not instruct and then go have go do the homework later, and then you struggle with it because you miss something. No, it's the other way. It's the other way around. It's flipped. And so, how great would that be to have some sort of like, hey, okay, we do have a lot of cool Masonic texts, right? But instead of just saying, here's the book, like Joe said, and just good luck, now we actually say, read this chapter, and we're going to discuss it as a class together, or we're going to set aside 10 minutes in lodge to discuss this. Like, do like lodge book club, but in lodge, and actually start applying that stuff right away. How great would that be?
Be super great.
Be super great. Good.
Do you
So
imagine Joe doing a book club on the secret teachings of all ages, like as part of the lodge meeting?
So that was asked by, so we have a book club at my lodge. We're on our third book.
Nice.
That was requested by more than one person. And I said that book club would take 4+ years. Half the people would quit, and the other half would just have eyeball burnout because we'd be on the same chapter for like 6 months. So no. But I love it. I love it. I love it. I love mixing different ways of learning. And I mean, we glossed over some of the easy ones. I mean, you guys have all been Masons, as long as I have. When did the shift happen between having a stodgy person behind a podium reading a paper, move into, oh, we're going to have multimedia in the lodge, and we're going to access different ways that you can learn, and, bring sound in and bring presentations in, and, things like that. That's a very recent thing,
That's fair. Yeah, because at the beginning of my Masonic career, it was definitely much more, oh, we're gonna have some guy, hey, can you pull up the podium? Yeah, and he drags that old wooden table that was built in the 60s, drags it up to the the top and starts reading from his 6 neatly stapled pieces of paper, right?
No, it was cooler when they had the binders with the hole punch, and they brought their paper in a bind. Yeah, that was, you knew it was going to be legit.
That was classic chef's kiss education right there.
Like when the district education officer kind of shuffles around and he takes out his big briefcase and it's like yellowed pages. It's like, okay.
Dude, it's like snooze fest at that point.
I'm so triggered.
The educational content of that isn't necessarily what's on the page. It is the page. It's history, right? That's the only, it's like this archaic piece of history falling apart. And yet, it's not what's on the page. It's the actual page itself in terms of like Masonic archaeology. That's the only education that exists in those realms, unfortunately. Snooze fest.
It's a good question from Esoteric Fitness. Do any Masons partake in Bible studies?
Yeah, totally. Just out in a lodge.
Yeah, I was going to say Christian ones probably do.
Just not in lodge. Yeah, because we're all about harmony and tolerance, right? So we want to make sure that.
Well, I think you can get through a Bible study without proselytizing. There's a big difference between. Well, yes, and the line gets very thin when people start to actually talk and their mouths open and stupidity comes out. So, but yeah, no proselytizing.
Right.
Bible means book, guys. Bible
no
means
conversion. Yep. So another thing that's really implied in all these different techniques so far is that it should be tailored, right? It should get some sort of feedback, right? Because people have different learning techniques and learning needs. And so I'm not saying we need to innovate for innovation's sake, obviously, but I think we do need to take into account there are people, real world example, right? I had a mentee who could not get the catechism down at all, like was just struggling super, super hard. Great guy, would have made a great Mason, but he bowed out. He just says, I can't do it. I got a young kid. Like I've tried. We worked for a couple months, and he just said, I want to stay in, but I can't do it. I just can't do it. And that was
Boo.
we lost a good man because of that style of pedagogy. So it's sad to see.
Boo.
Boo
Yeah.
on that.
I don't like that.
And so, again, when we consider the whole purpose of why we care about different educational instructional techniques, it's so that not that they pass the test. We just don't want them to just become a master mason and that's it, right? We want to encourage things like lifelong learning. We want to encourage things that apply critical thinking. We want to do things that get beyond the literal words and start to explore what that means and the symbolism and what it means to them.
Part S.
Right, exactly.
Exegesis.
Right, that's why we want to explore these different learning styles. Joe?
Yeah, no, question for you, and it's not rhetorical. Totally want an answer.
Okay.
The whole time you were talking, I was like, everything that John said would be so awesome if our system as an organization was not designed to reward doing all the things we just said don't do, right? So,
Yep.
people who are the most
Totally
amazing
get it.
lecturers on earth, right? And they know every single word. I know so many people that know the words, right? They've known them for 30, 40 years. They know every single word. You can call this dude at 2:00 in the morning. Hey man, what's this word for this? Boom, he's got it. And he knows it, but he doesn't know anything about what it means.
Bingo.
So he can deliver it all successfully and knows nothing about it, right? So, but again, we reward that. It's like, oh, Jason, who memorizes super fast, we're going to get him a certificate and we're going to do this and we're going to put him in line and we're going to make him worshipful master because he knows how to memorize stuff, right?
I mean, that's basically what happened.
But no, it's not. We were blessed because Jason actually knew how to do all the other things. But I mean, let's look at that. How many lodges move people along and then end up putting someone in the Oriental chair just because they can memorize stuff?
I remember sitting in lodge when we had our DEO, district education officer, come and give a talk. And he blew my mind. I remember where I was sitting in Herndon Lodge when he said, we have ritualistic requirements to become master of the lodge. We have 0 educational requirements to become master of the lodge. Master. Like by the definition of that term, you have mastered the craft. We have 0 educational requirements to sit in that chair, in the Oriental chair.
That's
blew my mind. Blew my mind. To your point, Joe. So what gets measured gets managed. What gets measured gets done. And so, to your point, if we incentivize certain things, willingly or unwillingly, we're going to get the result. A system gets the results it was designed for. And if we design, now you got me on a soapbox. I love this because we've maybe unfortunately designed a system that only rewards rote memorization because of tradition. And fortunately, we have good men who make it through and have leadership traits, right? We try to supplement that here in Virginia through like subordinate lodge officer training or slot training. And like we'll slap a weekend on you and call you like leadership, have leadership training. You're not really quite leaders in a weekend, but we say we've checked that box. But other than that, it's really can you memorize the words enough to sit in that chair?
I think there's such an emphasis on this, of course, because of the traditional aspect of what you've identified here, but like what led to that? And for me, I look back at this stuff as sort of a tangible thing. It is a tangible way to show to your brothers that you have somehow dedicated this time, this learning to the craft, and they make this assumption falsely that this equates somehow to your dedication to the craft in all areas of your life. I once asked a past master, we were at Grand Lodge sessions, and we were talking about the necessity or lack of necessity for a catechism return. And I said, I don't think it's necessary at all. And he said, why? I said, if he can tell me what happened in his own words, then he got it. If he can't, this is just me. I mean, I get it. There might be, dissenters out there, but if you can't, then you don't get it yet. You don't understand it. And my dear brother Scott said, I disagree. If he can't memorize it, he's got no skin in the game and he's not a real Mason. Like literally that's what he said. And I was taken aback by that because I thought it was very like I get the school he comes from, right? I can't fault him for that. But for me, that was very narrow-minded. It's too acute.
Yeah. I don't agree, but I understand.
Well, if that were true, what you said, I would expect there to be lots more people out there that have the rote memorization down pat that would blow our minds away with their learned and erudite ability to explain Freemasonry to us. But they don't. They walk through an agenda and they wrap their gavel a couple of times and okay, the meeting's done. So, and if that were also the case, we wouldn't be in the decline that we're in, that John loves to talk about.
Prove me wrong. All right, here we go. We're now at that time where we're going to start wrapping it up. You ask the final question of the week. And the final question of this week is, your Grandmaster for the day. How would you change the pedagogy of Masonic instruction or education? You can take your pick, right? So whether it be candidate progression or whether it be continual education. That's right. Like None Your Business says. Time to give those concrete ideas. Grandmaster for the day. What would you do? Let's start with Jason. Take it away, Jason.
Yeah, you clicked the wrong button there, didn't you?
Freudian slip.
Yeah, there we go. I think I would institute a program that would for some reason this is a really hard one for me.
It is hard. It's a tough question.
Because, as Grandmaster, like, I would want to be respectful of like different learning styles and different needs for different lodges. And so I wouldn't want to just like put out an edict that says all of y'all are going to have Masonic education every meeting. Although, yeah.
It'd be nice to have.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have. So I think what I would do instead is I would perhaps set up a program to curate content and speakers and put forward an awareness campaign on how using those speakers and that content can better your lodge and better your members and better your membership.
I like it. Very good. Thank you, Jason. Next up, let's do Robert.
Well, I think, I used to be a teacher for, I used to train people how to fix parts of airplanes and stuff. So there's it's very kinesthetic, but it also involves a ton of bureaucratic sort of paperwork and reviewing and memorizing things because of OSHA and Department of Defense, like contractual safety obligations and all of these things. So it's really a tight bundle in how we had to approach this. CBTs or computer-based trainings, watching videos, clicking through to make sure you understood what you witnessed, and then practical examinations. All of these things turn out to be sort of a wonderful way to attack something, I think, in a way that helps you understand it inside and out. It's not unlike the medical profession. You go to get your CNA or you go to get your EMT or your paramedic. You have tons of book work. You have practicals that take up all of your time. And you're trying to do all of this so that you can eat, sleep, breathe. Like, you have to know this stuff, right? Because it's life or death in these situations. Now, granted, Freemasonry isn't life or death, but I would contend that there's probably something that Masonry can do in terms of looking on the outside for how everybody else does stuff, right? We are so traditional, and we like to say we're the what does Nietzsche say? You think you're the ebb of humanity? You're fools, right? Freemasonry is at the ebb of enlightenment, okay? And the sooner we realize that, and like, have a little bit of humility and look at what the outside is doing in terms of this stuff, then I think things might turn out to be a little bit better. And to do that, I think Rhode Island has a great program. Granted, they're very small. The Grand Master, I think the Grand Lodge requires everybody, before going on to the next degree, they have to go to Grand Lodge and attend kind of like a trainings workshop. Now, what's involved there, I don't know. But I like the idea of coming together and being inclusive in a room full of guys or people, and learning together in the various different ways. And I think that's the way I would do it. If I was Grandmaster, I would say, we need to have classes, and those classes need to become so real that nobody's pencil whipping them, right? Nobody
Nice.
just shows up at a Masonic Lodge meeting and there's no administration there and decide, we're not going to do the opening ritual. Let's just stay in the dining room and whip through the agenda, and we'll send out minutes, and we just won't say that we didn't open. Nobody's doing that. Well, if they are, I don't know about it. But like, in that same respect, we shouldn't be doing education that way either. Right? You should do it.
Right. Love it. Very cool. All right, Joe, over to you.
Everything RJ said. I'm just kidding. I have my own answer this
Huh.
time. Yes. So I think if I were Grandmaster for a day, which one? I think fixing things from the top down is a good strategy, right? As we're in our refining stage of this journey that we call Freemasonry. And what I mean by that is some of the things we were talking about earlier, where we have people who are untrained and unqualified becoming the leaders in our fraternity, whether that's at the local level or at a district level or at a jurisdictional level. So why don't we make the criteria to do that fit more in line with the things that we teach and the things that we say, right? So just because someone memorizes things does not mean they're qualified to lead a lodge for a year, or to be a district education officer, or to be grand lecturer, right? Memorization is the means to an end. It is not the end. So, and that being said, so what I would expect to see is, if you're a line officer, or if you're interested in becoming a line officer, you should, absolutely, you should memorize your ritual. You should be able to impart the initiatic journey upon a candidate, but you should also know how to present education. You should know how to take the things that we do and apply them practically. All the things that we say we like to do. Community service for the right reasons. Not just to check a box on a form at the end of the year. Bring brothers together and discuss the things that we preach in our ritual, right? So take that ritual and make it alive. So having some sort of, like I said, a framework. So if you want to be master or a warden or a deacon or something, you got to be able to present a program. And it can't be a crappy program. And you can't just read out of the book. And you do have to memorize things, and you have to be able to put a strategic plan together. Like all these things that we teach to business leaders, right? Teach those to us, because at the end of the day, we're kind of sort of a business and we're really crappy at it. So why don't we impart, 60 plus years of business education into this 300 plus year old fraternity? So I'd say top down, take your leadership, retool it, teach them things, whether they want to learn it or not. And as it comes from the top, it'll trickle down eventually. If it's on the same trajectory as how we've gotten stuck in this rut. It'll take 300 years, but we'll get there. We'll get there together. So
We'll
Yeah.
get there by 300 more. Love it.
boom.
Good stuff. Awesome. I'm going to build on what you said, Joe, because what I think it
That's a
really
first.
I know, this is great. What Joe said. And I've been thinking a lot about this whole like recertification program. Like every professional certification has this recertification aspect, right? So the only tweak I would make to it as Grand Master is that there are going to be role-based certifications, right? So if you become a Master Mason and you are happy to sit on the sideline, God bless you. That's important, right? We need members who are there, willing to help out in the way they can, but are not ready to jump into an officer's seat. However, if you are interested in becoming an officer, I think there should be another level of certification, additional requirements necessary that prove that you have the additional aspects of leadership beyond ritual memorization, right? In order to hold that chair. You want to be part of a committee, or if you want to be part of education, like there should be certain flavors of certification that should be continually re-upped, that prove that you have the proficiency, the knowledge, the understanding to keep that going on, right? So that's, again, if I were a Grand Master for a day, clean slate, right? It's not just Master Mason one and done. It's not just your warden certificate here in Virginia to just get you in an officer's chair. It is something that you have to work for, you have to prove for. And I love the idea of like PDUs in the program management professional aspect of what if there were Masonic development units, MDUs, that actually prove that how are you applying this? In the past 2 years, how have you applied Masonry? What have you learned? What have you researched? What have you shared? What have you presented? Like that, I think, helps grow the fraternity, helps grow the craft, and helps grow the individual, which is what we're all about, right? We're taking good men and making them better one certification at a time. So with that, I want to thank you all very much for watching. We'll see you next week, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.
Cool.